Right. Thank you. Apologies for the couple of minutes delay. Welcome to tonight's meeting. My name is Councillor Nikos Souslous. I'm Chair of the Social Inclusion and Community Safety Policy and Accountability Committee. Before we start, just a few housekeeping points. The meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. If the fire alarm sounds either continuously or intermittently, we will adjourn the meeting, and please leave the meeting in an orderly fashion by the staff exit, which is behind me by the right, and will be directed to Riverside Gardens if that is the case. There's tea, coffee, and biscuits at the staff kitchen for all guests and attendees. And if I can ask officers and our guests to introduce themselves before speaking for the first time, and if you make sure to turn your microphone on and before you start speaking and off once you're done. We can now begin. Apologies for absence. We have apologies from Councillor Taylor and Councillor Campbell-Simon is joining us online. I think he should be there. He's telling me he has some technology problems, but he'll be joining. Number two, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interests? No. No. Okay. Thank you. The minutes of the previous meeting, do members agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of November, 2023 as an accurate record? Oh, yeah, forgot about that. Okay, thank you. Then we move on to item number 4, the 2024 medium-term financial strategy. I invite Councillor Rowan Reid to give an overview of the 2024 financial strategy. And we'll also hear from Andrea Mark to present the corporate budget strategy, and Bram Kent, who will give us a presentation on the budget for the environment budget for the same year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is actually my my 7th committee meeting the last 3 weeks, so I'm very happy to be at this one, because this is the 7th and final one of the PACs that I'm going to be going to explain the budget. Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you, committee members, for coming along to hear about the budget. This is one of the most important things that the council does every year, so it's great to be able to scrutinise it and go through it in this level of detail. So I think it's obvious to anyone who's opened a newspaper or turned on the radio in the last few months, this is a difficult time for local government finance. Despite that, here in Hammersmith and Fulham, we've been able to put together a balanced budget that not only protects the core services that residents value and rely on, it also protects those extra services that only Hammersmith and Fulham deliver, things like free home care, things like free breakfast for primary school children, things like the local law enforcement team, which I know you're going to be discussing later today. Now, it's only possible for us to be able to protect all of these services because of the ruthlessly financially efficient approach that we take to budget management, and also the continuous process of reform that we're constantly going through as a council. And I'll touch on all of these points briefly as I introduce the budget. Before I start, though, I did want to say a few words of thanks. I want to thank Andre and the whole of the finance team who've done an excellent job in helping us put together this budget at a time when everyone else was enjoying their turkey and sprouts over Christmas. I know that Andre and the finance team were pouring through their spreadsheets to make sure that everything added up and every dot and comma were considered. I want to thank my cabinet colleagues like Councillor Harvey here, who have done an excellent job in terms of managing their budgets throughout the year and identifying yet another round of savings for the 14th year in a row since we entered this period of austerity. And I want to thank all of the officers across all of the departments in environment we have here, but across all of the departments who've done an excellent job in putting together this budget. Making sure that we really are protecting those services that residents rely on. Now, I mentioned earlier, this is a difficult time for local government finance, not just in places like Woking, like Birmingham, like Nottingham, where they've had to issue Section 114 notices. Now, Section 114 notice is essentially a council saying it's not able to meet its financial obligations. The LGA estimate that 1 in 5 councils are going to be struggling to do that this year and could end up issuing a Section 114 notice. We know that inflation has been a huge problem for the whole of the public sector this year, with rampant inflation reaching double digits not too long ago. Interest rates as well at very high compared to previous previous years. But I did want to offer some reassurance to anyone who's watching this meeting this evening, and to anyone who comes to speak to you, who do rely on council services and are concerned that the council isn't going to be able to meet its obligations. In Hammersmith and Fulham, we are a well-run council. Last year, we actually ran a budget surplus. We underspent against our budget at a time when most councils are taking money out of their reserves in order to balance their books. We actually put money into our general balance reserves. Residents can rest assured that their money is being well managed here in Hammersmith and Fulham. We did have a difficult position, difficult starting position when it came to setting this budget. So, as has been said many times, since 2010, funding from central government has been cut by 56%. So there aren't many organisations that could continue offering the same services that they were offering over a decade ago with less than half the resources. But here in Hammersmith and Fulham, we are able to do that, and we've been able to go beyond that, which I'll touch on shortly. We started this budget setting process with a budget gap of £25 million. Now that means before we can spend an extra penny on investment, we had to find £25 million of savings. That's no tall order, considering this is 14th year in a row that we've had to do that. But despite all this, we have done that. We have achieved the balanced budget. As I say, we've managed to protect all of our core statutory services. We've managed to protect those services that make Hammersmith and Fulham unique, things like the free breakfast for primary school children, things like free home care, things like the law enforcement team, things like the council tax support scheme, things like our ethical debt collection policy. All of these policies that make Hammersmith and Fulham such a great place to live, we've been able to protect. We've also managed to find £10.7 million to invest in new services across the council. And we're going to touch on those later on as part of the main presentation. Now, this is only possible because of the council's ruthlessly financially efficient approach to managing budgets and our continuous programme of public service reform. I often think that the second part of my job title, the reform element, is perhaps just as important as the first. Now, there are three areas of reform that I wanted to briefly mention this evening. Firstly, technological reform. I think in Hammersmith and Fulham, it's fair to say that we are right at the cutting edge, the forefront of utilising new technology in local government. We're using artificial intelligence in our adult social care service. We're using robotics and automated processing as part of our revenue and benefits team. All of this is to make sure that we have a streamlined service that's as efficient and effective as possible and really delivers for our residents. We are going through a process of organisational reform. We have 4 large cross-council reform projects that we're kicking off this year, looking at utilising how we utilise our property as a council, commercialisation, whether there's extra revenue that we can be squeezing out of the council, the staffing, how we go about running the council, and also data. What data do we hold about residents? How do we make sure it's not siloed? How do we make sure that it's being used in the most effective way possible? Finally, policy reforms. Now, as part of this budget, we're investing in, for instance, family hubs. Now, this is an excellent way to take council services out of the town hall into the communities where people are, where people rely on them. People coming to ask about their childcare services will also be able to get access to housing services, adult social care services. It's really a way to widen the residents' experience and their access to council services. I'm going to hand over now to Andre with the presentation, who's going to talk you through the nitty-gritty. Then we're going to hear from Kelly, I think, from Bram, sorry, about what's going on within the Environment Department, and I'll be very happy to answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Ree. I'm Andre Marks. I'm the Council's Head of Financial Planning and Investment. I'm just going to talk through really the corporate overview of the budget for 24-25 and kind of set out some of the strategies and objectives of it. So in terms of the budget, we kind of really outlined our strategic operating environment and where we are right now in terms of the position across the council and across the country, really. So we know that, as Councillor Ree mentioned, we know that we're in a state of economic turbulence, so high inflation, high interest rates as well. And that has led to a number of pressures in terms of on people's household budgets. So we're seeing relatively high levels of unemployment, fall in real incomes as well. On top of that, the legislative environment as well. So there are new burdens that are being placed upon local authorities across the country, and also increasing regulation we're seeing being burdened as well, Oflog and the CQC amongst other bodies being established to regulate. Underpinning all of that, there's an uncertainty for local government funding. So business rates, there's uncertainty around that. Fair funding review has been promised for a number of years. We still haven't seen that take place yet, as well as social care reform and the reforms around charging for social care as well. As well as that, the council's embarked on some major regeneration projects that need to be completed and come at a significant financial cost, some including the civic campus just down the road in terms of those projects. And so in terms of the objectives of the financial plans, as Councillor Ree mentioned, the plans look to protect our statutory services, deliver on those services that are valued by residents, businesses and visitors alike, ensuring the safety of the residents, businesses and visitors, to this council, promoting prosperity, ensuring that the council is agile, modern and innovative, and also underpinning all of that, ensuring that we've got a very strong financial governance and resilience in place as well. And so our strategy to kind of build on those objectives is ensure that we deliver on our efficiencies. So the council has delivered nearly £120 million since 2014-15 in terms of savings. Generate and utilise our resources in terms of Section 106 and SIL, so the Community Infrastructure Levy, more than £100 million in balances there. Ensure that we do full recovery of our costs related to service delivery from fees and charges, securing resources through national programmes where they are available, working across the public sector and other local authorities to ensure that we are being as efficient as possible, and utilising our IT systems and maximising the use of those technologies, as Councillor Ree mentioned earlier. So to move on to the actual budget strategy for 24-25, there's a number of key principles underlying that. So in terms of pay and price inflation, putting aside 3% and 5% as provision for both of those, looking to continue to invest in the delivery of council priorities, and we'll touch upon that in a few slides. There's also a proposal around council tax to increase that by 2.99% in terms of the Hammersmith Fulham element, and then for the adult social care element as well. There's the National Revenue Grant Settlement, so the local financial settlement, which the final one only came out a few days ago. Anticipated growth in the properties in the households that are in the council, and then also maintaining the resilience, as I mentioned, having strong financial resilience and governance, and being able to repay back our costs on our planned borrowing in those major projects. So in terms of council tax, so just very quickly, Hammersmith and Fulham still maintains an extremely low council tax, one of the lowest in the country, in terms of the Band D equivalent, which is what's used to measure council tax. And it's estimated of the 93,000 households that the council has, just over 50%, so 58%, are expected to pay in full. So 42% of the households are subject to some sort of discount or exemption in terms of council tax. There's an assumption from government that that councils will continue to levy the maximum amount of council tax across all local authorities, and that will continue until 27-28 at least. So to move on to the numbers in terms of the overall council budget, so that 5% and 3% in terms of inflation works out to be roughly about 13.7 million, in terms of numbers. In terms of investment and services, Councillor Ree mentioned 10.7 million investment on key services. Savings have been found of 8.1 million. And then other costs related to borrowing costs and savings related to cash interest on our cash balances, and also savings to do with our accessory fares, come to about 12 million. And then our council tax as well leads to our balanced budget for 24-25. So just a bit of detail on those savings proposals. I won't touch on those in detail, but you can see they've come across a wide variety of departments, mainly around improving our commissioning, improving our use of IT, rationalising our property as well, and also reviewing some of our commission services. So across the wide variety of services, savings have been found. In terms of that investment and growth into services, so 4.2 million going into our social care services, mainly around our home care, and also looking to invest in our homelessness and children's services as well, those being the services that are under the most financial pressure as of recent times, and looking to protect those. In terms of financial resilience, so just touching upon our reserves, it's essential that we maintain an adequate level of reserves, given the financial pressures that are faced across the local government at this moment in time. And our reserves are comparable to other local authorities, not just in London, but across the country as well, in terms of the level of reserves that we hold. And we hold a recommended level that is about right that in terms of there. We also have earmarked reserves which to use for particular purposes and are earmarked for that particular reason, such as improving our IT equipment. And so looking forward in terms of the medium term, we still anticipate it's still going to be a very difficult operating environment to deal with. Inflation still remains stubbornly high, above the Bank of England's target rate. We're still seeing the impacts on households in terms of energy and mortgages as well. So we're still expecting a tough environment. And we're expecting regulation to only increase from central government as well in terms of the demands on local authorities and the pressures that will bring about. And we're still forecasting to have an average budget forecast of around 12 million per annum over the next 3 financial years. So whilst we managed to balance the budget for 24-25, the medium term still needs to be addressed in terms of the financial picture. And just in terms of next steps, so in terms of where we are, Policy and Oversight Board has obviously happened already. And as Councillor Ree mentioned, this is the last committee to take place. And then on to Cabinet next week. And then finally onto full Budget Council at the end of February to ratify the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Andre. Bram, if you'd like to.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Just waiting for some slides to load up. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Chair. My name is Bram Kant. I'm the Strategic Director of Environment, and I've just got to take you through some highlights of the Environment Department's budget that is relevant to this committee. Yeah. This slide is a colourful slide. It gives you a sense of diversity in terms of the range of services that are actually covered in the Environment Department, and also some of the volumes in terms of transactions, etc. So it's just to give you a reminder, and I always find that quite, I always appreciate how much range and the services are actually provided within the Environment Department. This slide is highlighting on some of the achievements that are relevant to this committee. The first one is that there's 22% reduction in the reports of antisocial behaviour to the police since the introduction of the 72-strong law enforcement team and gangs unit in 2021, including a £2.8 million worth of secured developer contributions. We've continued investment and enhancement of the Council's comprehensive CCTV network, enabling over 1,000 arrests in 22-23, following intervention and or support from Hammersmith Fulham's CCTV operators. We've implemented the Council's Violence Against Women and Girls strategy to prevent abuse and support victims. And we're cracking down on counterfeit goods and underage sales, including the seizure of 6,000 illegal vapes since April 23, with a value of £55,000. And lastly, we're launching the new £1 million King Charles III Coronation Youth Fund, bringing together Hammersmith Fulham and community organisations to support young people across the borough in the arts, music, drama and sports. This slide just reminds people of the range of services. So we've got about 50 or so budget managers in the Environment Department, looking after about over 80 services. Managing a revenue day-to-day budget of £109 million spend and £80 million worth of income. And this is spread across 3 service directorates as listed below. So in total, we've got £109 million for the environment, 80 million, that was a net by budget position of 28.8. In terms of the budget challenges relevant to this committee, we're making an additional investment of inflationary increases on both major contracts, a minimum of 4%, and council staff pay of 3%. There's no specific additional budget investments related to this committee, but we are reprioritisation of budgets to maintain the existing prevent services despite the withdrawal of the government funding from the 24-25 budget. That's equivalent to £150,000. We've got continuation of the community and cultural events programme, which is £150,000, which includes a variety of inclusive events. In total, we're saving £1.55 million for the whole environment department, of which £650,000 saving is relevant to this committee. The first item is in relation to the public protection noise and nuisance team. We're looking to find alternative funding of 200k to cover that. For a thorough review of the fees and charges, there's 200k there. And lastly, through service transformation and commissioning savings of 250k. In terms of strategic budget issues going forward, we've got the challenge of trying to find money for the climate and ecological emergency, which is quite significant. We've got Hammersmith Ridge works being undertaken at risk, pending confirmation of funding contributions from DFT and TfL. We've got waste disposal savings from new waste collection services that may be insufficient to cover service cost. We've got significant national inflationary pressures impacting on service spend, e.g. energy, fuel, and current service contracts. We've also got potential national public finance pressures impacting on specific grants, funded services. An example of that is TfL funding. And we've got continuous pressure on income on £80 million worth of income target. And some of those income targets can be quite volatile. And lastly, we've got ongoing pressure and challenges to secure the funding for the corporate business plan objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you to officers and thank you, Councillor Ree. Shall we begin with questions by members of the committee? Councillor Miri? I've got a few questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Ree. Thank you very much for the presentations as well. I've just got a few sort of specific minor questions I'd like some clarification on. Just be interested to hear more about these points. Firstly, actually, maybe Councillor Ree, you'd be best placed to answer this. And Andre as well, you also mentioned the point about using AI to improve services and also to save money. I'd just be interested to hear if you can give us some examples of how this could benefit residents, you know, what innovative ways AI could be used either to provide better services or to save costs. And I'll go on to my other questions after that. Just some interesting examples if you can give them. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. So I think like all organizations now, we're looking very much at what benefits new technology can bring. Organizations that don't look to the future often end up, being left in the past. So we're very much in the forefront of looking to make sure that we're harnessing new technology as it becomes available and to make sure that we can deliver the best possible service for residents. I mentioned a couple of areas in my introduction. I can go into a little bit more detail. So within adult social care, we actually have a savings proposal this year for £250,000 through using artificial intelligence. Now, one of the main benefits from this will be around the returning equipment that's loaned out to people. Also, in terms of making the interface between the council and the residents receiving home care a lot simpler as well. Lots of the people who are being looked after through the adult social care department, might struggle with some basic communication comprehension issues, and so this really does just make the system a lot simpler, and uses artificial intelligence to very much speed things along and streamline that process. Within the revenue and benefits team, We use automated processing, so that's it's a case of making sure that all of the details that we get from residents from one part of the system are able to feed through to the rest of it. So we're not constantly asking people to keep updating their bank details or updating their contact details or this sort of thing. We can just process payments. It saves a lot of officer time, and it means that we can crack on with actually getting money to people who need it. There's a number of other areas we've used. We've used this in the parking permit application program and had a very good response to that. That speeded up the process, made it a lot easier for residents. So yeah, we're very much always on the lookout to make sure that we can utilize new technology as and when it's available, just to make the systems more efficient and more effective for residents.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So it sounds like there's sort of frontline application of AI and sort of backroom application of AI. Yeah, very good. Very good. Andre, you mentioned in your presentation anticipated growth in properties. Should I understand that to mean growth in population, number of people living in Hammersmith and Fulham?
So not necessarily. So the way that the council tax system works, I guess, is when we talk about growth, that can mean things such as where discounts are no longer applied. So if, for instance, someone has a single person discount and they no longer are single, for example, then they would fall off that list, and that would count as growth in terms of the household number of households. So whilst there is a number of major programs, like I mentioned in the slides, that will contribute to a natural growth in the population, it also is part of the system in terms of discounts and exemptions and things that can lead to the growth in that as well. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It can also mean additional properties. You know, as part of the council tax base report that we considered full council, I think there were 2,177 new BAMD equivalent properties that were coming on stream. So yeah, always looking to make sure that the council base is as wide as it should be.
Thank you. Councillor Dismore, any questions?
Yeah, just a few brief questions. Thanks very much. Just on the slide, I mean, maybe Councillor Rhea or Andre here can answer this. The public protection income, I assume, are FPNs, fines. Is that what constitutes the income? The 9.4 million? We saw a slide which had expenditure, and then the middle table was income, and then the third column was the net. I'm just curious as to when we talk about income. Thanks.
Yes, hi, I'm Kelly Gooch, Head of Finance for the Environment Department. Yes, so that's all income. So some of that is fine income. It's a very small amount that's budgeted there. And of course, that gets reinvested in the cost of providing those enforcement functions. A big part of it is Section 106 funding. So we mentioned before, we have £2.8 million of funding there that funds contributes to the LEC team and the gangs team. In community safety, we also have a number of other grants, and that's all budgeted for in there. We also have environmental health income, that also sits in public protection. So food safety inspections, pest control income, those kinds of things. So it's the gross income in total.
Okay, thanks very much. That's helpful. There's probably one for Councillor Rhea. The startup costs, obviously, with the LETs, with the equipment, with the cars and the uniforms and that kind of thing is obviously, I assume, broadly done now. Was that just at the time a one-off cost, which obviously doesn't feature anymore in the costs, or solely salaries and that kind of thing? Or is there further investment going into additional equipment sort of year on year to build up capacity?
Yeah, so obviously some vehicles and equipment we would already have had, because we had the Parks Police and things like that we were able to transform into the LEP team, who are so valued by residents across the borough. We are constantly investing in new equipment to make sure that they've got the tools that they need to do the job and to keep our streets safe.
And do those investments vary much from year to year, or is it just there's always a sort of float fund that goes to that, and it's more so what the budget can afford as opposed to needs, or how does it work?
Well, obviously you set a budget. You don't just say, well, here's a blank check, go and buy as much as you'd like. Yeah, that's not how any area of public service really works, is it? So yeah, we set an equipment budget. it's up to the department to meet that. Where there are pressures, we examine those in year, but I'm not aware of any such pressures in this area.
Thanks. And then just on to AI and CCTV. Obviously, there's been a lot said about the amount of CCTV that we have and use of AI to possibly reduce crime. Given that the sort of LETs are often described as the eyes and the ears of the borough, do you think that those improvements in technology might in future reduce the need for the number of LETs that we would have? And if so, do you think that the savings on that front could be spent potentially on more police, either in the gangs unit or to tackle violent crime?
Okay, a couple of issues there. No, I don't see investment in CCTV as being something that would reduce our desire to spend on the LET team. I think both these resources work together in terms of trying to make the borough both safer and cleaner. We saw a report, was it last week or the week before, about how Hammersmith and Fulham has seen the biggest decrease in fly tipping across London, 33%. And that's in part due to our investment in CCTV, as well as the work of the LETs who patrol the streets, who are able to report fly tipping and make sure that it's dealt with as soon as possible. Yeah, my view is that these are both worthwhile things to be investing in. They both have a positive impact on our borough, on the community. And so I certainly wouldn't be looking to reduce investment in either of them.
So just to be clear, I mean, some of the technology now, cameras can automatically call the police if they recognize weapons, for example, which would obviously reduce the need for physical people to be walking around to make that same call. In principle, if the technology was there and you could reduce LET numbers and invest in those that could tackle violent crime with powers and arrest equipment, as a matter of principle, would you be against doing that? Or would you at least consider it?
Look, I think the first job of any aspect of government is to keep people safe, and you can't do that on the cheap, right? We're certainly not looking to do that. We're not looking to cut these services. I mean, in the situation you described, but if the entire borough was able to be viewed through CCTV, I mean, it sounds like some sort of Minority Report police state that you're describing here. But I mean, perhaps in that situation, yeah, I think we'd have far bigger problems on our hands than whether or not we spent £2.8 million on the LET team. No, my view is that these are both tools that help keep the borough safe, and we're not looking to cut either of them.
Just to be clear, you are the one that brags about having the most CCTV, I think, in the country, and yet you're the one that describes it as dystopian situations. That is a bit odd, but thank you for accepting, at least in principle, if there were abilities to reduce the LET with the use of technology. I take from your answer that you would be open to that to make it more efficient, but perhaps not.
We're very proud that we have the highest concentration of CCTV cameras in the country because, as I say, they keep the streets clean and they keep the streets safe. And that's why we're going to keep investing in them.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. If I may ask a couple of questions myself. On page 16, I think it is, there's a mention of the core spending power and the impact this has on the budget. And I was just wondering if you could just explain it a bit more in layman's terms, if you'd like.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. It's good to get back to reality rather than the slightly bizarre hypotheticals. So core spending power is one of the things that the government looks at when it comes to calculating the local government financial settlement. The idea is that councils should all be given a grant that increases their spending power, the amount of money that they're able to spend on services by inflation. Now, the figure we use for inflation in local government is from the previous September. So in this case, that's 6.7%. So the idea behind the core spending power increase is that councils should have a 6.7% increase in their ability to spend money. Now, as Andre mentioned in his presentation, this 6.7% figure is based on the assumption that all councils increase their council tax by the maximum amount possible without holding a referendum. That's 2.99%, and that they increase their social care precept by the maximum possible, and that's a further 2%. I'd point out as well, actually, that the government's assumptions on what raising council tax brings in is quite far from the reality of what it actually does in this borough. So, you know, we're sort of almost £1 million out in terms of what we get from that. So yeah, so when it comes to setting the budget, we have to base it on a number of assumptions. One of them is, in this case, we've taken the decision to increase council tax by 2.99% so that we can keep meeting our spending commitments at a time when inflation is particularly high. You know, 6.7% is, you know, far and away above the target of 2%, which the Bank of England and the government's trying to hit. I think it does also talk to a wider point about how central government funds local government, right? The slightly chaotic and mismanaged way that it goes about doing this. So each year we are given our local government funding settlement. For the last 6 years now, that's been a 1-year figure. You know, this is how much you're going to get for the year. Now that makes it very difficult for us in local government to plan ahead, to work out. You know, we try and work out our budgets of 4 years in advance. But that does mean that we're basing the next 3 years on assumptions. You know, we generally go with what's the worst case scenario, and the government are pretty good at meeting the worst case scenario. So we found out this year that our 1-year local government funding settlement, we found out this figure on the 18th of December. Right, the 18th of December. So we're supposed to be setting this budget in February. There's no reason why it has to be this late. There's no reason why it has to be a 1-year settlement as opposed to a multi-year settlement, which we used to get. It's not an ideological point. It's, you know, it's not a big government, small government thing. It's just a competence issue, really. Yeah, it means that the figure came out in the final week that Parliament was sitting. So local government is sort of sitting there waiting practically until Christmas before it gets these figures. It means that we're working largely off assumptions, and it's a needlessly chaotic way for us to be setting multi-million-pound budgets like this.
Okay, thank you. Well, on another point, Bram, you mentioned in your presentation the withdrawal of funding for Prevent. I mean, we've discussed this a few times on the committee and the importance of the service. Can you just tell us a bit more about the implications of this withdrawal of funding?
We're talking about potentially the government withdrawing the funding, but as a council, we're going to prioritise it so that we keep that service going. It's just a question of deciding what the options are available to do that. So,
yeah, sure.
Thanks. Just a follow-up question on that. So I wasn't aware that the government was withdrawing funding for Prevent. So just hoping you could clarify, is the programme being wound down? In which case, if we're continuing the funding, does that give us the opportunity to change some of the ways in which the programme's implemented, or is it still the same programme? It's just that we have to find ways to fund it.
So the government has stopped funding for certain boroughs, certain parts of the country. So the preventing violent extremism as an initiative is not ceasing, but by an assessment made by the government, they feel that certain parts of the country don't require that funding anymore. And as Bram has said, we're finding alternative sources of that funding so that we don't reduce what the current level of Prevent provision is at the moment.
Yeah, my understanding on this is that this is based on a risk assessment carried out by the government. They've decided that extremism is no longer a risk now in central London. Slightly bizarre when you have marches, extremists marching in central London with messages of homophobia, messages of anti-Semitism, all these sort of disgraceful things that I would certainly consider to be extremist. This is happening just around the corner from us here in Hammersmith and Fulham. It seems bizarre that the government have decided actually that there's no risk of extremism here in Hammersmith and Fulham, but we've decided that we should. This is valuable funding that we want to continue providing it, and so that's what we're doing.
Thank you. And just a final question, maybe for you, Councillor Rhee, as I know you're front and centre of this. The Green Bond, I know it close in a week. Just wondering if you could give us an update since the papers were published about where we are with that.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hammersmith and Fulham is probably Britain's greenest borough, and we're particularly proud of the Hammersmith and Fulham Green Investment. So this is by far the largest local government climate investment scheme, 5 times bigger than anything we've had before. We're looking to raise up to £5 million for climate-related projects right here in Hammersmith and Fulham. It's very much a win-win-win, for residents. It's a chance to have a low-risk, long-term investment, 4.85%. For the council, it's a chance for us to borrow at a more competitive rate than we would otherwise be able to borrow for these projects. And most importantly of all, it's a win for our environment. It's a chance to get some much-needed investment into fighting climate change right here in Hammersmith and Fulham, something I know that residents are particularly concerned about. So for as little as £5, residents are able to invest in the scheme. As I say, it gives them a low-risk, long-term return. We did issue the first tranche looking to raise up to £1 million, which is due to close on the 13th of February. I'm actually very happy to say this evening we've hit that £1 million target. So we're going to have to close the scheme early, such as the demand for this product here in Hammersmith and Fulham. We will be looking to move on to the next stage of this, looking to raise even more money in the future. So I'm looking forward to being able to tell you more about that as and when we get there.
Thank you for that. Then congratulations to everyone for hitting the target. Any other questions? Yeah, I can ask them. Yeah, sure.
Thanks very much for that. I'd be interested to learn more about the family hubs, actually, if anyone can speak to that. From what I can see in the report and from what you've mentioned in your presentations, it sounds like a very worthwhile thing to be investing money in. I'd just be interested to hear a bit more about that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we're always very keen, not just that we're providing good quality services here in Hammersmith and Fulham, but also that the access that residents have to those services is as straightforward as possible. Often trying to get hold of council services can be a case of waiting for hours on a telephone or taking a number and waiting in a queue for a long time. We want to try and get past that. We want to have a new, easier approach for residents. And that's why we're setting up this family hub program. It's going to be a physical presence for the council out in the borough so that residents can come and get information about the services they need. They can access childcare services, but we're also hoping to expand that to make it as wide as possible, whether it's housing services, whether it's advice on benefits, the full gamut of council services, taking them out of the town hall and into the communities where people actually need them.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, I'd like to thank our officers, thank Councillor Ree, and congratulate you on presenting us a budget under the circumstances that Councillor Ree mentioned. And thank you very much. Brings the first item on the medium-term financial strategy to a close. We'll be moving on to our next item on trust diversity in the third section, Hammersmith and Fulham. We'll just need a minute to have a change of lineup on the tables. Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much. So our next item number 5. Oh, sorry. We should wait for Councillor Dinsmore. Right, we're moving on to item number 5, trustee diversity in the third sector in Hammersmith and Fulham. We have with us today members of the third sector, locally and beyond. We have Jamie Hilton from Fulham Good Neighbours, Shad Hybertan, Deputy CEO of Sobers, Malcolm John, the founder of Action for Trustee Racial Diversity, and Dalton Leong, Independent Chair of Surrey VCSE. I'd like to thank you all for coming. I'd like to particularly thank Jamie, who alongside Councillor Campbell-Simon, they came to me with this idea to look at an issue that I know a few charities in Hammersmith and Fulham are experiencing, the fact that they would like to diversify their trustee boards, but they are perhaps struggling to do this in a way they would like. And we're trying to think, we thought the council is a good forum to do this. There's only, of course, so much the council can do in terms of intervening in charity boards, but we can be the forum where the ideas can be discussed and we can hear good practice. And of course, since we interact with so many charities, we can perhaps give suggestions and we can bring people together. We also have Yvonne Okio, who is our strategic lead for equality, diversity and inclusion for Hammersmith and Fulham. And perhaps we can start with a presentation from Yvonne on this. Yvonne, if you'd like to get us going.
Apologies, just trying to get the presentation to work. I'll try that again. This is in my way. There we are. Apologies for that. Thank you. And so when we're looking at trustee diversity, we are, I think most of us are aware of the 9 protected characteristics under the Equality Act. So we have race, sex, recognizing that sex, obviously, it's not just male and female, we're looking at non-binary as well, age, disability, marriage or civil partnership, pregnancy and maternity, gender reassignment, religion and sexual orientation. Also aware of other factors that may come into that, such as care experience, young people, lived experience, which is very important, socioeconomic class, neurodiversity, geography, where one lives, but not forgetting skills, knowledge individuals have, the networks they may have in their communities, their experience, and the list is endless, really. This is some information from the National Trustee Diversity, just looking at the context nationally. So Inclusive Boards 2023 research into the UK's largest 500 charities, senior leadership teams and boards highlighted that 13% of charity boards have gender parity. Over a 10th have an all-male senior leadership team. And 51% of charities don't have a single minority ethnic woman on their board. 6 out of the top 10 highest income boards with no minority ethnic representation are based in London as well. If you're looking at sector standards, the UK Charity Governance Code's Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Principle states that board diversity in the widest sense is important because it creates more balanced decision-making. Where appropriate, this includes and centers the communities and people the charity serves. This increases a charity's legitimacy and impact. Equality and diversity are only effective and sustainable if the board works to be inclusive, ensuring all trustees are welcomed, valued, and able to contribute. Further benefits of diversity on trustee boards, representation and inclusivity. Diverse trustees bring a variety of perspective, experiences, knowledge, backgrounds to the decision-making process. And this helps ensures that organisations are representative of the communities they serve and are inclusive of different voices. Effective decision-making, diverse groups tend to make better decisions. And if we do have more diverse trustee boards, we would welcome different viewpoints, skills, and expertise that can also approach challenges from various angles, leading to more innovative and effective solutions. A broader skill set, of course, would have a broader range of skills, and the diversity of skills is valuable in addressing the multifaceted challenges that organisations in the third sector face, such as fundraising, programme development, governance, and community engagement. Improved governance. Again, the trustee boards enhances governance, it avoids groupthink, and also leads to members more likely to engage in constructive debate and oversight, which is essential for good governance. Enhanced creativity and innovation, which will lead to more innovative approaches and strategies, helping the organisation adapt to changing circumstances and better fulfil its mission. Better understanding of community needs, which is really important and vital for tailoring programs and services to meet the specific and varied requirements of different demographic groups. Increasing trust and credibility. So organizations will be seen as more trustworthy and credible by the public. Having a diverse board will also enhance reputation and build trust with stakeholders, including donors, beneficiaries, and the broader community. Compliance with legal and ethical standards is really key. We do have legal and ethical expectations for organizations to promote diversity, mainly that Equality Act. And having a diverse board helps ensure compliance with these standards and demonstrates commitment to equality and fairness. And finally, reflecting changing demographics. We're all aware society is becoming increasingly diverse. Hammersmith and Fulham is a really diverse borough, and having the diverse trustee board allows better reflection of demographics, which again ensures that representation and remains relevant to responding the changing needs of those communities and the populations that we serve. So some approaches charities can take, understanding what stops people becoming trustees, so looking at any barriers to working with organisations who have experience of improving diversity, using organisational values to support development of a learning plan, developing a roadmap for improvement, including measures of success, using the chair to enable a more diverse board, regularly reviewing the skills and diversity of a board to make sure the board reflects the shifting priorities and needs of a charity, and finally, being accountable for performance against EDI objectives by publishing goals and progress on the charity website and in the annual report to prioritise the issue. Sorry, I think I've just missed the last slide. Apologies for that. In terms of what we can do, I think Councillor Suslis, you've touched on that in terms of the council working in partnership and supporting that advice and guidance, but essentially it's working with our third sector partners to understand the themes relevant to Hammersmith and Fulham charities, hearing from local voices who have lived experience as trustees, enabling engagement and promotion of best practice about diverse boards of trustees, highlighting guidance available to support both diverse and inclusive recruitment, exploring what approaches can be taken to support aspiring trustees, particularly those who are currently underrepresented, those marginalised groups on trustee boards. And finally, exploring drawing on the webinars, events, educational opportunities available within the third sector, many of which are delivered free of charge. Thank you.
Thank you, Yvonne, and thank you in particular for this slide. What can we do? And I'm sure there's already quite a lot we're doing. I mean, we'll have this discussion as well. And, you know, Councillor Harvey, apologies, I didn't get to welcome you earlier. You know the sector quite well. You also feel free to come in and give us your views. I think one of the very beneficial things we do as a council as well is we get obviously to nominate some councillors or, people in general to trustee boards for some charities. And I've seen, for example, that we've been able to nominate people who are, of a diverse background, as we said, to those charities, and that having been part of those, some of those charities, it definitely benefits the discussions being had and the governance of the charities. But I'm sure we'll be discussing this later on. But first, we can hear from our guests. And Malcolm, would you like to start us off?
Yeah,
if you'd like to. Yes, please. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, thanks for inviting us to come and talk to Hammersmith, and with my colleagues Dawson as well. So I'm Malcolm John. I founded Action for Trustee Racial Diversity some 4 or 5 years ago, and when I've been on nice charity trustee board, not all at the same time, but over about 20 years. And the board I was on when I started this was Anti-Slavery International. And when I left that board, there were then no other Black or Asian people left on board as trustees. I was vice chair at the time. And so I think the recognition that we had to do something became a bit sharper. So we reached out ourselves, mainly through social media, to our networks, and we successfully recruited 3 Black and Asian trustees. Part of them are still there, and I think inclusion, I think is part of the issue as well. People often join and then they find that actually the environment isn't conducive and it's not for them. So I had some time at the time, and so I reached out to my own contacts to see what we could do to address the issues around underrepresentation. I used volunteers, Reach Volunteering, a great source of more diverse volunteers, so I got in touch with them. And the figures that Yvonne has shown, the latest one from Inclusive Boards, there was a Take on Trust report the Charity Commission did in 2017. And that sort of shows from there to now limited progress in terms of where we are. The stats, about 8% of trustees are from Black and Asian backgrounds, compared to 14% in England and Wales, and 36.8% in London. So there's quite a disparity there. In terms of women of colour, less than 3% are actually on trustee boards. Again, an even bigger gap. What we set out to do was to try and bridge that gap. A, by raising awareness, and actually by not just saying stuff, but by actually concrete actions. Because I think for the last 20 years, there's a lot of reports around where we are, but actually not much has actually changed, and the figures from Inclusive Boards actually reflect that. So Action for Trustee Racial was action for key stuff for us. So we looked at the barriers and the challenges, some of which Yvonne's already identified. Most charity boards recruit informally. So therefore, 93% of charities are older, are white, are university educated, which is not the population that we live in. Therefore, they tend to recruit from their own networks, from people that they know, which perpetuates the status quo. And even those who really want to have more diverse boards, because of their network and their status, they don't really know how to go about doing that. So again, ATRD for short has attempted to try and bridge that gap. And it's about lack of knowledge and access to individuals with Black and Asian background, because actually that's not part of their community. From the position of somebody looking who's young, Black or Asian, who may well be in full-time employment, looking to become a trustee, first of all, often they don't even know about trusteeship. Often not in that charity unless they've actually a relative or member of the family who's been involved in the charity. And when they do get to apply, look to apply for a charity, they look at the website, and they tend to see a lot of people who don't look like them. So they think, why should I apply? Will it be welcoming? Will I feel comfortable there? And therefore they don't. And haven't been through that group of trusteeship. So therefore they're competing with people who've done it, who know how to apply, you know how to fill the form, and you get through. The part of it is how do you change that system, the structures, that it appeals to a wider group of people. So what we've done is we went on Google, and we've now got a database of over 500 Black and Asian network organizations. People are saying, we can't find the people with skills. Ours is a skills-based database. We've capped it at 500, but actually there are hundreds and thousands more which are out there. And it's a wide range of organizations, covering finance, covering medical people, covering engineers, covering librarians. It's an enormous list. And we make it available to charities on a weekly basis, and we support them in terms of how they actually build up their trustee board to make them more diverse. We also have a network of individuals from Black and Asian backgrounds who, again, are looking for peer support. They're looking for advice, they're looking for signposting, looking for some awareness. So we've got about 500 people on our network. We call it HID Connect. And so again, we advise and we signpost people on that network to agencies. So it's a support group. The third thing we've got is a guide, which I wrote about, which I wrote about 2 years ago, called From Here to Diversity. We may borrow the title from somewhere, I'm not quite sure where. And it really builds on the best practice that HID has built up and developed over the years. And it's on our website, and it's downloadable. Or you can buy it for £9.95 from Director of Social Change. That's a quick plug. So last year, because diversity starts at the top, it starts with councillors, it starts with CEOs, it starts with chairs. We got from a small grant, one of my partners, to start something called BAFCA. And BAFCA stands for the Black and Asian Future Chairs Academy. And that's developing a pipeline of future chairs in Black and Asian background. I think as everyone said, the CEO set the culture, the chair set the culture. Unless you get that lead from the top, it's not going to happen. So that's very important. So everyone's already outlined what the benefits of diversity are. Often they're probably not as widely known as everyone has articulated. So part of the thing is to actually raise that awareness of what the benefits are. And there are myriad, there are lots of benefits. So in a nutshell, that's where we are. What we aim to achieve, I think that this sort of meeting is brilliant for us, because actually it's like replicating the work that we're doing. We're a small organization, we're about 1.2 paid staff. We got some funding from the Co-op Foundation about 3 years ago. They approached us, seeing what we're doing, and which has been brilliant. But clearly it's about trying to share what we're doing, raise awareness more widely. So I'm actually going to Birmingham next week, talk to them in a similar capacity about how they get more diverse charities. And we're working with Dalton in Surrey about how we replicate the work in Surrey. So I think I'll stop there and happy to take questions later, and hopefully hand over to Dalton to put some meat on the flesh with that line. So thank you.
Thank you, Malcolm. And also many thanks for submitting a report in advance of the meeting, which is, of course, in our papers. Dalton, if you'd like to tell us about the practical steps you've taken in your organization.
Brilliant. Thank you for having me. Malcolm, you missed the fundraising trick there. You sold one copy at £9.95. You should have sold several copies at £9.95 each. Charity. So I had a career in banking and financial services once, and during that time I became a founding trustee of Shooting Star Children's Hospice in Hampton, and then moved from banking into to work there. Actually, I was the chief exec of Shooting Star before we merged it. So lots and lots of years of charity governance experience dating back to 1995, and 3 roles as a charity chief exec, but on a regional and national basis. And retired now from full-time work. That's why I look so happy and smiling. And but since then have taken on a couple of non-executive roles, one of which is the independent chair of Surrey VCSE Alliance. And what we do is we bring together, there's about 16,000 VCSE organisations in Surrey, and we try and bring together the voice of those organisations to influence and shape health and care strategy, essentially, mainly around health and care, working with our integrated care system, and our local authority, Surrey County Council. I also founded the Surrey EDI steering group about a week after the murder of George Floyd in the US, went to a charity meeting and said, look, what are we doing about this? It's awful news in the US, and it felt like we weren't really doing much in the charity sector in Surrey at the time. So sent away to go and make, people come around a table to discuss the issues around equity, diversity and inclusion. So that's been going for 4 years. And the Surrey VCSE Alliance and the EDI steering group have more recently been working with Malcolm and with another organisation called Getting On Board and Reach Volunteering that Malcolm's already mentioned, to bring together a programme in Surrey we've called it Transforming Trustee Boards. It's a bit of a mouthful, as Malcolm keeps telling me, but Transforming Trustee Boards. And it does what it says on the tin. We're trying to create opportunities for at least 30 new trustees from diverse backgrounds. So it's a funny word, isn't it, when you talk about diverse, because I'm diverse because I'm Chinese origin, but I was born in Balham, but I'm still from a diverse ethnic community and proud of my Chinese heritage. So I count as a, diverse ethnic, background or community trustee. But what we're trying to do in Surrey is, as I say, promote a number, at least 30, as I say, and we've got 19 organisations, and this is something that we've thankfully had funded by Surrey County Council. And it was through the EDI steering group, as I said, that I chair and founded in 2020. We had really good relationships with our councillors in Surrey, and somehow managed to get, and I think it was actually COVID money, actually. I think it was in a pot somewhere, and you know how it works as councillors. But we managed to find some funding that helped support the equity, diversity and inclusion strategies and organisation plans for charities. But what the local authority was keen to do was just give us the money. So they said, Dalton, you and the EDI steering group, you can decide how that's best spent, because it's actually for the benefit of VCSE organisations. So really, really lovely opportunity. And obviously we've got to report back and demonstrate value and impact and etc. And we signed up to this programme, as I say, with Malcolm, Action for Trustee Racial Diversity UK, Getting On Board and Reach Volunteering. We're taking 19 VCSE organisations who have all put their name forward. They've been through a programme, they've finished the programme, it's about 6 different modules. Their chairs of trustees involved, their chief execs have been involved, or their EDI leads in some cases. And it's about supporting them individually, collectively, with the delivery of inclusive recruitment practices and how that pushes forward to pre-application workshops, post-application workshops, talking to unsuccessful organisations where there haven't been, so it's not just go and do it yourself. They're trying to support even where people have not been successful. So a lot of it is based on group coaching of participants during and post the appointment process. We're currently going through the application process. All of the applications are out there, the adverts are out there. We expect recruitment to happen around April time, April and induction. And obviously, if you were to see me in July, you might see an even bigger smile if we've achieved the numbers that I've been talking about. I'm told only on Monday at a meeting that when they've done this before on an open programme, they've on average recruited 3.75 trustees per organisation. And I nearly fell off my seat hearing that, because that's an amazing number. And what we've found with the 19 organisations in Surrey that have signed up to the programme is most of them want multiple trustees, which is great, because then you've got an automatic mentor or buddy or someone that joins at the same time. So that's fantastic news. Some of the disability charities have chosen to collaborate on their recruitment process so that they're not just trying to feel like they're going alone. And according to Getting On Board, who are facilitating the programme, they're saying that this is the most engaged group of organisations they've ever had on one of their programmes, which is really lovely feedback for me to hear as independent chair of the Alliance. So we will have further workshops to support that recruitment process going forward. And, as I say, if you invite me back in July, and hopefully I can even drop you an email and say we've succeeded or we've failed. And I don't accept failure as an option though, so no pressure. And that's it for me, unless there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalton. We'll take questions at the end. So we've heard about the issue from Malcolm, and we've heard about a good case study from Dalton. Shad from Sobers and Jamie from Good Neighbours, if you'd like to spend 5 minutes just telling us the local context and what you see as perhaps we could support charities with.
Okay, thanks, Nikos. Right, in terms of what Malcolm and Dalton said, I'm fully supportive. And you know, from my work and the work I've been involved in the local context, I'll give an example. We did the Black Minority Ethnic Mental Health Landscape Research Report in this borough. And as a result of it, we made some recommendations. One of the key ones was that the West London Mental Health Trust, for example, was a statutory provider, and staffing should reflect the community that they serve. And not only just staff, but at the senior level. So there's been a commitment from them to implement all the recommendations, most of the recommendations of that report. And it's still working, it's the kind of consultation with them and the reality of the data that came out and showed the stark picture of the mental health situation affecting minority ethnic communities in this borough. And it's something I'm familiar with because I set up a Black mental health project 30 years ago in this borough, when the situation was 80% of acute admissions in St. Bernard's were young Black men. So that was an issue. Nothing much has changed, but actually we wanted a response. So they are responding, and they've set a target of 40% of the senior management to be from minority ethnic communities. So I think that's kind of real work you can do and make changes. And in terms of this kind of work, I'm steeped in it because 30 years ago, I ran a national positive action program under the Section 37 of the Race Relations Act. By national, I mean England, Wales, and Scotland. And it was quite an interesting time. And the viewpoints you got from various, mainly local authorities, by the way, to train up people from minority ethnic communities to develop into professionals, but not only professionals, but managers. So that was something I found interesting. I remember calling Swansea CEO and introducing the scheme, and his response stuck with me, saying, "Well, yeah, it's very interesting, but we don't have Commonwealth residents in this town." And that was the kind of, you know, it said something a lot, that kind of response. But I think a program was implemented, and 80% of those people on the program got employment, and some of them really good position went on to become managers. The point about having government, it's an issue here locally. 4 years ago, I was approached by local organizations to say, "Shad, you know, my board is, this is an officer within their organization, has no minority ethnic representation, it's mainly male, and is there something we can do about it?" And they invited me to a meeting, and I spoke to the trustees, and their response, I think, said a lot. In the sense that we don't discriminate, we treat everyone equally. But the point made by Yvonne and our guest speakers is that if you don't have a trustee board that has ultimate power and policy direction of the organization that reflects the community, you will not understand the needs, you cannot engage with those communities, you will not deliver a service that caters for the whole community. And I think it's more dynamic to have diversity. And I'm talking about in terms of not only ethnicity, gender, disability, age. So what's in the defined? When I was younger, I was quite active and involved in lots of committees and things like that. But now I notice there's a lack of young people becoming trustee members. And I think it should be a concern for us, because I think you need that kind of engagement from young people as well. So I'm fully supportive of this kind of initiative. And, you know, further to that, I think I also recall many years ago being in a London-wide grants panel, and we received a grants application form with from a minority ethnic group, and it's one area I'm working on now. And we obviously asked the composition of the trustees and everyone else. They were all obviously from that community, but they were all male. So I was the only minority person within the grants panel, and I said, "No, this is not acceptable." Others were kind of reluctant to challenge it. And I said, write to them and say that, you know, you need to kind of address this we think you certainly have a need, and we'll kind of we want a response and would approve your project on that basis. So I think, so I'm looking at that in terms of devising a program now locally to address the EDI should apply to minority-led organizations as well, and it's not just there's gender issues, there's other kind of issues that we're addressing. So it's across the board. You're not going to deliver an effective service unless you have a diverse community that can bring in new ideas and kind of challenge where it's needed. So yeah, supportive, and I've worked in this area for a very long time. So
thank you.
100%
Thank you, Shad. Jamie, I don't know if you want to say a few words with your experience with Fulham Good Neighbours.
Just very briefly, yeah, cheers, Nikos, and everyone for speaking. Yeah, I've been the CEO at Fulham Good Neighbours for 4 years now, and I've had a consistent board, a very committed, fantastic, capable board. However, 100% white, so nine of the 9 are white, 8 of the 9 I think were born in this country. I think they're largely church-going, all middle class, possibly mostly university educated, mainly able-bodied, and there's certainly a will there and a recognition that we don't represent the community that we serve, and we don't represent our staff. I suppose kind of small examples of that would be when Pride comes along, or when Black History Month comes along. There's no that can easily be forgotten. All sorts of examples like that. We've been working with Malcolm, and Malcolm in turn has put us in touch with Dalton, and work closely with Shad as well. And I think we all feel passionately about this issue. But I think it's not just a Fulham Good Neighbours issue, and it's not just a third sector issue. It's a much bigger issue than that. And I think the reason why we're so appreciative that Nikos got us on the agenda here was that we'd really welcome any commitment that councillors or anyone else in the room can do to support us with this, because at the minute we're struggling.
Yeah. I mean, if I can add one more point, during the COVID lockdown, following that, we got together minority ethnic organizations, leaders came and helped produce that report, because of co-produce, we felt strongly you need to have the community represented. And out of that, we also created something called Safe Space, where it was an online thing where minority ethnic workers from the sector, but also from the local authority turned up, and they could express themselves freely, how they felt. And there were grievances, there were kind of felt outsiders in some settings. So I think it's important for everyone to understand the impact on organizations in terms of how society operates for those minority ethnic people, and generally, even within organizations where they are, in mainstream organization, how they feel and how they're treated. Because discriminatory practices can be subtle, but are understood by the person who's a victim of that. So I think it's kind of important to not be afraid of bringing people who will challenge you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Shad and Jamie. I'll open the floor to contributions from other members of the committee and Councillor Harvey, if you'd like to add something. Yeah, Councillor. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Dinsmore.
Thanks very much, and thanks for all the hard work. Just trying to understand how this works as a charity by charity basis, especially if you have a charity that is focused on a protected characteristic. So you might have domestic violence, you might have gay rights, you might have ethnic minorities, et cetera. I mean, in that scenario, I can imagine more trustees identify with the demographic that they're trying to assist. How does that work then? I mean, would you say this board is, say, a disability charity, and actually it's way overrepresented by people with disability, and we need more able-bodied people, where I can take any example, how does it work in that context?
After. Yeah, I'm happy to, yeah. I think intersectionality is key. So most people don't just have one characteristic. So you may be Black, Asian, and disabled, and when you have a sexual orientation. So I think it's about, for me, it's about skills. So I think you start with skills and lived experience. So you start with what skills does the board need to function to achieve its mission. and maybe fundraising, maybe HR, and maybe marketing. And then you look at the trustee board represent its communities. So there could be disabled, there could be ethnicity, there could be a wide range of characteristics. So I think that's the starting point. So I've been asked people living in Northern Ireland, you know, so as an example, how can you, where do you feel from Asian background in Northern Ireland where there's quite a low, relatively low population? Well, I guess there is a population which would have needs. So it's perhaps maybe a much smaller number than in Hampton and Fulham, but there is a community there which you're reaching out to. So therefore, reach out to them, and if there is one person or two person, and then attract them in an inclusive way. So that'd be my response to that. So I don't know whether.
Yeah, you just basically stole my answer. We've read the same book, haven't we? But it is about that. It's about a skills gap analysis and understanding what you need first, rather than feeling the classic, you know, box ticking. I need 3 of those. So just a little plug when you mentioned Northern Ireland. I'm a trustee of the National Emergencies Trust, and I chair their equity scrutiny group. And we are looking for representatives from Wales and Northern Ireland. If you know anyone out there that you could share that with, that would be really helpful. But yeah, in answer to your question, which is an excellent question actually, because there is a danger sometimes charities feel that they must have 3 of those and 2 of those, and actually that's not always the answer. Yeah, and it is about intersectionality.
And just add a caveat from that. ACID looking to become a charity this year, formally. And Dawson was asking me earlier today, will it be an all-black board or whatever? I said, no, it's not going to be an all-black or Asian board. It'll be a diverse board with the skills that we need to achieve our mission.
Yeah, which is the right answer. It is, yeah, in terms of.
May I just ask one, just follow up on that, which is very interesting. So as I understand, you're not necessarily saying that every board should, in an almost numerical way, represent the ethnic or gender or sexual orientation breakdown of society at large. It's more, if there are 8 people on the board, it'd be good to have a representative from every aspect on it. Is that fair understanding? Or
I would say that's very accurate. For me, it's not necessarily so much about the board. It's more about how you are seen to represent the citizens and the beneficiaries of whatever the cause is. So it might be that you have somebody that is. I was a chief exec of UK's leading charity for children with brain injury at the Children's Trust, and we were very keen to ensure that somebody that had a traumatic brain injury or a parent that had brought up, that supported their child, had influence at a governance level on the board, which is a completely different approach to just saying, well, actually, we've got to have 6 of those and so on. So I think you're right. That's a really good way of looking at it.
Thank you. Councillor O'Meara, you had a question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for your time and your presentations. It's very, very interesting. One of the areas or points that I'm interested in, obviously, all the aspects of diversity that you guys have mentioned are very important. But for me, one of the areas I'm interested in is economic diversity. And often trustee meetings happen in the middle of the day. So if you're working, you can't attend. If you're from an economically deprived background, you probably can't attend. If you're not university educated, you probably don't feel welcome to attend. And I'm lucky enough to be a member of I'm a trustee of a local charity. The meetings happen well in the evening, after people have finished work. It's a very diverse board in terms of ethnicity, gender, and all the rest of it. But I won't name the charity, but I'm sure it's the case across the board. The economic diversity is still not there. And obviously these things intersect, as you say, race and gender and class. But I think you mentioned it's very difficult to find people from working class backgrounds to join boards, people who don't have university educations, people feel shut out. So I wonder, in addition to all the work you're doing on all the other forms of diversity, what would you have to say about economic diversity, which I think crosses over all of these different factors? Thank you.
Sorry, Jamie,
you go.
Actually, I don't want to fill my immediate response to that is, so in recent years, it's become more possible, if necessary, to pay, and you can pay a trustee. So if there was somebody, and certainly in terms of expenses. So, you know, if I put my National Emergency Trust trustee hat on, we do that routinely for people that attend, because for exactly the reasons you said, they're from an economic, more hardship, you know, background. So we make sure that we pay for them to attend and certainly pay expenses and so on, because it's a really good question. It's because they can bring so much to the table that all, you know, in Surrey, you can imagine, you know, very, very middle class, white, lots of retired people, you know, we haven't got it right at all in terms of diversity. And certainly not in terms of, you know, economic diversity. So that is a real challenge. And someone mentioned earlier also about age, you know, youth, and having, you know, youth trust, much younger trustees. It's really refreshing when you've got someone in their 20s join a board, because they look at things so differently from old people like me. And they just bring a different dynamic. And of course, they might not be in the same economic circle as many others, because they've just started their careers, for example. So there are definitely ways of incentivizing from a financial point of view to ensure that you appeal to those types of trustees as well.
Yeah, I think my idea to that is the whole system of charity governance is probably medieval, probably when it started. So I think it's about looking at the whole structure, making it more flexible, making it more accessible for the range of people. And I think the whole discussion around pay still hasn't really taken on. It's still seen as being something for retired people who can afford it. So that has to change. So even if you're an economically well-off working class person, you still would actually want to become a trustee because of all the culture that surrounds it. And I think it's about a discussion around being flexible about compensating people for time off, people in full-time employment. Again, if they took a day out or over a month to do trustee work, then they lose out. And the system doesn't really allow for that. There does need to be a proper discussion about the whole structure. And I'm actually talking to the Kivo conference in next March about the very system about charity governance, and like throwing some ideas about how we can change it. So hopefully that'll start that discussion. But I'm glad it started here, and it's happening, but nowhere near as widely as it should be. So thanks for raising that.
Yeah, I was going to say, in terms of, you're quite right. You hit the nail on the head. In terms of what we're seeing, we get a lot of people starting up organisations and with really great ideas. What we find is an increase in people wanting to register the CIC. You can then get paid for doing their work and be in the governance. And I think charities, big charities, a few years ago, big charities did pay their chair. They wanted someone dynamic. Yeah. So they target and it was allowed, I think, but they were very big organizations, housing associations and so on. But for smaller charities, we are slightly behind at times in our attitudes. And I think it's something that needs addressing, because, you know, a lot of people now don't want the burden of recruiting trustees, keeping motivated. How do you recruit? You know, you get people, CIC, you're allowed to compensate the people trustee.
I think that's, yeah, the community interest company, absolutely. And also the social enterprise. So the VCSE is voluntary community and social enterprise. And you know, that's the more common term used by government, NHS England, local authorities now, VCSE. And quite often there's an F in there as well for the faith sector. But I automatically see the faith sector as part of the VCSE world, as it were. But social enterprise is the same as the community interest company in terms of being able to, make money, as it were, from it. And there's so many different terms, not-for-profit, social sector, civic, it's almost confusing, actually, for some.
I mean, yes, diversity isn't about a ticking box.
Yeah,
it's not, it can't be, and there are, and I'm sorry to say, there are some charities where they will have a ethnic minority represented, but they're marginalized. They have no kind of voice. Yeah. And I think that comes through, and people disability leave, or just, they can then present and say, yeah, we've got an ethnic minority person, or we've got a woman, or we've got a disabled person. But I think it's a challenge that we in the sector need to kind of rise to. But I suspect that we want the local authority to somehow come up with some policy or advice to the sector to address this issue. And I think, it's something most organizations can look at and think they could do with improvement. One of the organisations, the argument that comes back to me often is, well, it's really difficult to recruit people and can't get trustees. You know, I remember it depends on what you're doing, and there was a time when I was involved in particular minority organisation, remember an early housing association, and all minority people, and they were really enthused, would attend meetings to ridiculous hours past midnight, you know, that's over enthusiasm. So, but that was a period of people being allowed that let's also an influence in managing things themselves. I think we really need to, so we're looking for support from the local authority.
Just very briefly on that as well, I think, yeah, upskilling and making the trustee role of interest to folk, you know, the training we put on, so boards are accessible. Because, you know, a lot of it's kind of stepping into the dark. People don't really know what's involved. And I think as well as that, it's kind of partnership beyond just the third sector, within the third sector, but beyond the third sector, and working with whether it's the private sector or whether it's the public sector, saying, is there a way of working this so that someone can have time off from their role to support a local charity? Yeah, I think that has all sorts of benefits, you know, beyond kind of limitations to what we're talking about.
Thank you, Councillor. Maybe you have a follow-up question. Just so we're all on the same page, we'll have another 10 minutes for the discussion because we'll have to move on to the next item, but I don't want to kind of cut anyone short, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, it's not so much a question, but I'm reassured to hear you talk about the system of how charities operate kind of structurally, because I think obviously it's very important to train up people and encourage people to apply to be a trustee and support them in that and speak to existing organizations. But unless the system changes or the structure changes, then certain people will still be kept out. So just want to say I'm reassured to hear that there is a recognition that in addition to dealing with the system as it is, the system also does need to change in some ways. Yeah.
Just to add one point on that. So the chairs, very tough to get someone to chair a charity. It's going through tough times. It's very time consuming. So offering co-chair capacity, where you have a chair with lived experience, working with a more experienced chair, where bring that diversity onto that chairing role. Sharing the chairing role amongst trustees with specific skills. So it's not just one person doing it. One does HR, one does fundraising, one does operational stuff. So I think it's looking at new ways of actually bringing more diverse people by actually looking at the way it's done and saying, can we do it differently? So yeah, so hopefully that discussion will happen more and more.
The other to add to your list, which was a brilliant list, by the way, is mentoring and reverse mentoring, especially. So I have a reverse mentor in the space of EDI from someone who's been doing it for 30 years, even though I'm passionate and been focusing on equity, diversity, inclusion as, you know, chair of this. But actually, I'm not. Yeah, we all learn. It's all about journey, isn't it? I learned from you, Malcolm. So I think that's important as well. Looking for, you know, buddies, mentors, coaches, whatever, is very helpful too. I think it's a really good point you mentioned about the system, though. Spot on.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Harvey, please.
So not so much a question, more of a statement or observation, just say amazing. So it's really great to hear about the work you're doing. And I think about the amount of times people approach me that I know saying, do you know someone, you know, within your networks that you could ask? And then I'm sort of thinking, oh, who can I ask? Oh, I know this person. And just knowing that there's an organisation out there that's set themselves up to address this is really fantastic. So well done.
I really appreciate that. Yeah. Because I often get queries saying we are an all white board and but I've got to fill in the gaps. But so thank you for that.
And to become a charity status as well. That's brilliant.
It's a bit scary for me as well. So I'm watching this space anxiously. But yeah, we're recruiting with trustees as we speak. So yeah.
I think Councillor Harvey, you make a very accurate point that it is all about networks as well. And, you know, people keep asking us and keep asking me if we know people. I think just to share one sort of good case study we have locally, both Councillor Mir and myself were trustees at the Crichton Centre, formerly Bishop Crichton House. And we almost didn't realize how we ended up there because they started expanding their networks and because they were looking to rejuvenate and, you know, renew the trustee board. And literally, as soon as we joined, within a few months, the trustee board has completely changed. And they were saying how maybe 10 years ago, they had the problem when applying for funding where they would say that funders would say that the trustee board is too old. Now they'll say the problem is it's too young, which is perhaps a good headache to have. But it just reminds me that there is, as you mentioned, Jamie, there's many other organizations locally that may be experiencing the same problems, and many other organizations locally that may have information and advice to share, as there are nationally and regionally. Shad, I mean, you know, with Sobers, is this a forum that perhaps you could look into bringing all this together? And, you know, we've had this discussion before today, which can be a great starting point to actually expand this and look into how we can support locally, you know, the local authority, the charities, each other. How can we, you know, move this forward, you think?
I think, you know, I have discussions with, I have a collaborative approach and a co-production approach, because I think without that, you can't really deliver something that's kind of designed in a way to be, has any traction. It's something, and I'm glad Crichton House is where it is now, because that's one of the organizations years ago that's kind of approached me. But yeah, when it was Bishop Crichton House, there was an issue. Yeah, take it forward. As I said, there's a training plan anyway on EDI. Sharon, our community organizer, and I are sitting down, looking at particularly smaller organizations, but the larger organizations are more of a challenge because they think they know it all and they, you know, they are more comfortable in their position. But I think it's something happy to discuss further and take on, but it's resource, you know. At the moment, I'm focusing on, we've achieved so much in health and well-being. And I think the other thing about this is that I was at a meeting today at the Health and Care Partnership, Hammersmith Fulham Healthcare Partnership, and they're going to have 30% cuts in their, you know, ICB staffing, which will impact on the local ICB. So, you know, and we've been driving for a local perspective and a local engagement. And the voluntary community sector is seen as an important plank in terms of the preventive agenda. So to build up the sector, to be truly engaged and engage with all the communities is an important piece of work. And this could form a plank of it. And I'm happy to work with partnership with anyone to realize that, because I've got a kind of people who have what's called mental health equity group, mainly we're leaders. We meet, and some of the aims articulated here already in the vision and aim of that, but we can make it wider. But that was because they felt they needed that platform. But yeah, I'm keen to forward this. So happy to have discussions with you and anyone else.
Yeah, sure. I mean, co-production is key to the council's approach. So yeah, certainly is the way we work.
Yeah. So residents and communities. Happy to. I'm welcome from way back, so.
I'm not quite that old.
Yeah, old.
Do you have a VCSE alliance for Hammersmith and Fulham? Is there something that covers what we do?
We're the CVS.
So that's
us. Solvus is
okay. For the whole of Hammersmith and Fulham. Okay, so effectively you're the VCSE alliance. Yeah. Okay, because your comment, Nicholas, was, I think, really helpful in terms of, you know, trying to create some ownership, if you like, for the VCSE to do its work and how we collaborate. So what works well in Surrey is there's lots of working groups that include partners from the local authority as well. So, you know, we have a number of portfolio leads in the VCSE Alliance, and they work really closely with all of the key boards with the local authority and with the integrated care board. And that's across the country, by the way. The 30% cuts is happening right across in the integrated care systems. So it's painful because we're talking millions of pounds stripped out of their budgets and so on. But that works really well. I'm very happy to talk to you offline around how that works for us.
I'm all, you know, for learning from other places. I believe.
Okay. Maybe we can connect outside. But the point I'm trying to make is it also needs local authority support and ideally input and somebody to champion it, to work well with the council.
Thank you. Councillor May, one final question.
Yeah, I just got two very quick questions, just so we can maybe come away with some action points from this meeting. So, and forgive me, I don't know the answer to these questions, but do local authorities already provide guidance or good practice guidelines for this kind of thing? A, and if not, would that be helpful and needed?
I mean, I think the guidance is out there, but I think there's kind of you've got your charity commission, you've got your NCVOs, and you know, a kind of convening organisation, and then you've obviously got campaigns like Malcolm's. But I think, yeah, strategically that's all very helpful, and theoretically it's all very helpful to kind of to take things forward on a local level. You know, I guess we kind of know that there are a lot of folk who would find it hard to access a board. So as a local charity, I'd say what we need to be doing is kind of as a collection of partners going out there and putting some sort of schedule together and you know, targeting at communities that don't generally have a voice on boards, and working closely with them to see what their needs are and what would appeal. You know, if they do say, I'd love to do it, but it's going to cost £10 for me to do it each time, or, you know, it's silly, that's daft, but it, you know, speaking to the economic side of things. Or if they say, yeah, I'd love to do it, but to be honest, I don't want to be the token gay guy on the board, or I don't want to, you know, I want to join with 2 or 3 other people, and I want to have a buddy, and I want to have this. So I think we need a local kind of a practical approach, and largely the guidance is probably there.
But I would say that the local authority backing that kind of thing,
yes,
would
absolutely,
be, you know, it'd be really good.
So
some people might perk up and say, oh, yeah, we've got to take this on board, because I think, you know, there are organisations where the CEO is dominant and the board is just there for signing off stuff. I think I want some more dynamic sector where people feel involved and participate and contributing to the organisation's general, you know, direction.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is scope for a blueprint. But actually, Surrey is the first one that I've come across that's really taking it forward over a number of years. And I'm going to West Midlands. Well, I know doing something similar around EDI and around trustee diversity. But we don't want people are reinventing it every time, I suspect. And I think there is scope for actually how it's happened and how we identify what the issues are, bring people together, and then actually have fund and then have a funding action plan. So I think there is scope for some sort of local authority guidance, because it's a specific thing, as it's not national, it's local, it's regional. So I would think that there is scope for something. And I don't know how we bring that about, but yeah, I think it's a great action in terms of taking that forward.
Councillor May, final comment?
No, I just wanted to say I think it'd be great if you could connect with Yvonne and with officers and maybe with Councillor Harvey as well. And, you know, this is the best forum to do that. So I just encourage that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. And yes, I'll have to stop us there because we could go on for a long time, because this has been a fascinating discussion. And it is a starting point rather than the end point. From here, you know, even getting to know each other and understanding what is there and understanding the problem that the issues that local charities face, and, you know, we can develop this further, as Councillor May said, with Councillor Harvey, with Yvonne, with the council supporting, and we'll be happy to do that. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. We're very grateful, and yeah, have a good evening.
Thank you for
Thank you so much. We'll move on to item number 6. Let me just give one moment. Item number 6 on the annual performance report for the law enforcement teams. We have Neil Thurlow, Matthew Hooper from the community safety team, and Mohammed Bassett, the law enforcement manager. If you'd like to start us off.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you. So the report that's been provided covers the months from March 2023 to November 2023. You may recall we met and you were supplied with details for February 2023. So this is a wide period. It has been some time since we provided our data to you.
Let's go on.
Yes, sorry, if we take just a couple of minutes conference break and then we'll be back. Sorry about that. Apologies to our officers to keep you waiting. It's getting late as well, but feel free to start off now. Sorry, we're just starting off. If you want to take your seats, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we previously met in February 2023, where I provided you an overview of the work that's been taking place within the Let Service. This report consists of our returns for March to November 2023. It's quite a detailed report and it provides stats on what our returns are for patrol data, the number of service requests that we dealt with, so on and so forth. There's also information in there about the types of work that we've been getting involved in. The summer was a very busy summer. It was a very, there was a lot of service demands, and I think the staff coped really well. One of the things that was highlighted in that February meeting was the need to provide, the ask was to provide further information on the tasking enforcement group that we've set up with the police. So just as a quick background, the council always attended the BCU tactical coordination group held by the police. And similarly, the police have always attended the council's tasking enforcement group, which is a monthly meeting. In November 2023, we relaunched it. So the TEG has always been there since the start of the LET. Police have always joined, the partners have always joined, and together we've worked to resolve a lot of issues that arise in the borough. But since November 2023, it's co-chaired by the borough superintendent and of course Neil, who's the Assistant Director for Community Safety. And what we're trying to do is just bring the two services together and have our priorities more aligned. We kind of did have that, now it's more formally aligned. And we meet every month, we have actions that we take away, and we come back and feedback on those actions, and we look at what next we can tackle. So that happens. That's on a more wider service-wide level for us and the police. But there's also new forums that have been set up for more localized interventions on issues that are taking place in the north, south, and central. So for instance, what we've had now is 4 new sergeants that have joined. So what we're doing is working with them to ensure that these introductions are done with the seniors and the sergeants, so that they meet on a fortnightly basis and they deal with issues that are arising in their areas or their wards. And similarly, we've now have 2 new inspectors as well, really good inspectors in the borough who are really keen to, help us, and we're keen to help them too. So they're part of these TTCGs, we call them, which are fortnightly meetings. That includes the police, the law enforcement seniors, and the community safety officers. And it's a case of the police bringing their top 3 priorities and telling us what those are so we can help them. And similarly, us telling them what those service demands are that we're receiving directly from residents, and we're sharing that with them. And together we're coordinating our patrols in such a way that we work together a lot more closely. And then the other aspect of it is we're also feeding back our evidence to them of what we've seen, and similarly they help us out as well. We've had some good interventions in South Park where people have been giving community protection notices because we've noticed that there was some drug use there, and we noticed it, the police noticed it as well, and as a consequence of that we amalgamated all the evidence that we had, and we thought it was fit to issue a community protection warning for that. So there's some really good work taking place. But from the wider TEG that takes place, some of the things that we've dealt with recently is the car crime in the borough. So one of the things that we've targeted and focused together, including the CCTV, the LET, and the police, is to try and reduce that. And as a consequence of the work that's been done, the police have had some arrests off the back of that. We've also disturbed a few attempted break-ins as well, which is really good because we were at the right place at the right time to prevent that. There was a drug closure in the north of the borough, and that was as a consequence of us providing evidence of what we've seen, and also collating that with what the police had received as requests for their attendance. And then more recently, the work, unfortunately, following the incident at Bishop's Park, where there was an assault. I should just make you aware, though, that the LET were in the park at the time of the assault, except it was further up. And, there were officers on site providing crime prevention advice to park users. And that was by the skateboard area, skate park. The assault took place further out by the Putney Bridge. So whilst we try to be everywhere all the time, we can't be everywhere all the time. So yeah, these are some of the things that we've got together and done in the recent months. But yeah, all the data on what we've actually achieved is set out in the report. So hopefully if you've had the opportunity to read that, I'm quite happy to move on to questions if you have any. Thank you.
Do we have any?
Just one quick question.
Yeah, sure.
Out of curiosity, have you ever been physically assaulted by a member of the public? Does that ever happen? You know, do people get violent and you intervene and then they like turn on you?
Yeah, so prior to taking up the management role, I was told do patrol. I was an officer. So in my capacity as an officer, I've done loads of things such as confiscate cigarettes from children. I've stopped big parties that were taking place by issuing notices. I've also confiscated drinks from people that were intoxicated. And yes, we were physically manhandled. I wouldn't say I was punched or kicked. No, that didn't happen to me, but that's not to say it doesn't happen to other people in our field, but it does happen, yes. So that threat is always there.
And if I may remember, Mo, you were telling me that quite a few times there have been quite a few cases of racist remarks made to some of our officers. That remains the case.
Yeah, so our officer in the north of the borough was subjected to racist remarks, and he was assaulted twice. He did go to court, and that person was charged and imprisoned for it. More recently, there's been two other incidents one incident involving two officers in the north of the borough. They were racially abused, all because they responded to a service request where someone said someone was doing something that was a nuisance. They intervened and politely asked them to stop, but they escalated very quickly because, again, they were intoxicated at the time. It led to some racial abuse directed at our officers. And as a consequence of that, we managed to work with the police, the local SNT, and found out who this person was. And that person is going to court in a few months' time. So we are attending as witnesses, all the officers are.
Thank you. And of course, we're all very sorry to hear that. Do we have in the team and in the department, do we have the appropriate support networks in place to make sure that the officers are being supported, both those that were the victims or the receiving end and those around them? Because of course, I'm sure this impacts morale for everyone.
Sure, the council has a really good support network for staff. So there's the employee assistant program, which is always available. There's also forums where staff can attend to get mental health support if they need it. But us as managers and seniors, we also take the responsibility to ensure that that person is supported. So the ways we can do that is by usually if they patrol on their own, we send them out with an individual, someone to go out with them, or we change where they patrol and we change their wards for a little while and then swap them with someone else. We have that flexibility because we've got 2 ward officers for every ward. So what we can do is sometimes take out someone and replace it with someone else so that that person doesn't have to go somewhere where they might encounter that person that abused them. So there is ways to move people around so that that doesn't happen to them.
Sorry, and just on that point, do we have a policy to make sure our women officers always with a male officer, or is there anything to make sure that they're not a target for anyone?
I'm glad you asked about that. So our female officers don't necessarily want to be treated any different to our male counterparts, their male counterparts, but those that want to go out on their own, so the job requires single patrol, lone patrol, but those that want that support will always have that support and have always been given that support. So if they feel the need to go out with someone else, especially in the evenings, so rule of thumb is in the daytime, if you want to go out by yourself, most officers are encouraged to go out lone patrol so that we spread our enforcement footprint a lot wider in the borough throughout the day. But in the evenings, we ask staff to partner up, which they usually do. But in terms of females, female-led staff, what we generally tend to do is we give them the option to patrol with a partner all the time if they feel that's what they need. So that option is always available to them. Yes.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Miri?
Thank you very much. I just got a couple of questions. Firstly, it's good to hear that these monthly meetings are taking place with the police, LET and the police. And I just wonder if you could speak about looking ahead, what some of the measures or what some of the hopes might be to deepen the cooperation with the police. So something that springs to mind, maybe you already have this, is a direct line between the LET and the police, like an emergency line. Maybe that already exists. Other practical ways of deepening the cooperation, because it sounds as if there is already a lot of cooperation. Obviously, it's two separate bodies, so I'm not asking about integration, but just ways to smoothen that cooperation as much as possible. I wonder if you could, yeah, thanks.
So I guess there's a few ways to do that at the moment. So, excuse me, they all have radios and body cameras. Both have emergency function. So if they need someone to support, they'll hit the button, and that goes through to the CCTV control room, which means that CCTV have live images and live commentary of what's going on. In the control room, we have direct access to the police radio through airwave, and we can patch images through to the police as well. So CCTV is the conduit for that. And thankfully, as most of that's very rare, and long may that continue. And then where we know we've got shared endeavours or shared concerns, those local TCGs will start to feed up to our TEG as things develop. And then so you'll have a layered approach where operationally they can do it on the ground, and then we'll look at those bigger issues that sit with the community partnership strategic assessment. So whether that's gang crime, violence, etc. We'll look at that and work out where we have our shared priorities and where we do shared working. So it is there. It does work well. And CCTV being 24/7 is the perfect way to manage that.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, and just to see that antisocial behaviour reports have dropped by 22% since the lets were set up is just an indication of the hard work that's being done. So thank you. Thanks very much.
Sure.
The government's announced, the national government's announced they are putting more police officers in the streets of London. Do you know if that's coming through yet? How many Hammersmith and Fulham are likely to get? Do you have any idea on how that might impact operationally on what you do, how the rules might change, and then along those lines?
So in regard to how many numbers, I don't have that. Craig Knight, who gives his apologies, would have that information. I think we're seeing it already though, because we've gone from 1 inspector to 2 on the neighbourhood functions. So Dan and Clive split the borough north and south, and then we've got an increase in sergeants to 8. What that means operationally now is that we can work on that sort of operational level with the senior law enforcement officers, the community safety officers and those sergeants to do those shared priorities and tackle and do shared operations. And then through my management team, including obviously Mo, we can then sit down with the inspectors and look at those sort of wider long-term problem-solving opportunities. So it's more capacity, which is welcome, which gives us more opportunities to engage with the police and for us to shape their thinking and their work as much as they do ours. But in regard to when they start to arrive, I don't know.
Yes, Matthew.
Thank you. So just to add to that, so there has been an uplift in policing numbers. Yes, that's definitely true. So the absolute numbers have increased. But from our perspective, as looking at the macro crime statistics for the borough and for London, one of the things that it's clear is that since numbers were last at record numbers, which was 2010, the population of London has also increased. So the challenge has also increased, which means that actually, if you look at the numbers of police per 1,000 of London's population, it's less now than it was in 2010. So the challenge remains.
And I think, and anyone who was present may correct me if I misremember, because we did ask more or less the same question at the last meeting in November where Craig Knight was there. And I think he gave the number, I can't find it right now in the minutes, it may well be there, but he was also saying that they were struggling to actually recruit the people to fill those positions, and he was encouraging people to come forward. Do we have any, yeah, Councillor Harvey?
Yeah, I would just echo what you said. I think it was last week or the week before, Craig actually said they're still struggling to recruit and get people and the numbers in. So that's going to be an ongoing problem, really.
So that even if police numbers are increasing, they're not increasing at the rate that's proportionate to the population. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I think the point Matthew was making is that austerity has cut police numbers, and all the Tory government is doing is putting them back to what they were. But even since then, the population's increased. They haven't even done a good enough job, I think, is what the point you were making. Yeah.
I hadn't taken that point, but I think that was very nicely put.
Well, let's not put words in Matthew's mouth, but yeah, anyway, yeah, let's move on.
Just one final point. I just want to make you aware that we're getting a lot of interest from serving police officers applying for the job. So we've got one individual who's starting in March who's a serving police officer. We've also had several inquire with our officers directly as to how they can come over and what the application process is. I don't know the reason for that, but I thought it would be important to share that with you as well.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And actually, my next question would be, and I think I asked the same one at the same meeting last year. Thank you very much for obviously the report on the successes and the challenge of the past year. What can we look forward to for the next few months or the next year in terms of the service changing? Anything you can share with us? Of course, I'm sure a lot of it may be confidential.
So we're looking forward to working much more closely with the police and tackling issues such as, in particular, violence and drug dealing. They're the issues that we want to focus on with the police, and we've identified specific geographical areas that we want to do that in, the areas where there are hotspots. So that's what's going to take up a lot of our work over the next 12 months or so with the police. But I think also it's important to highlight that we've made other successes in relation to environmental crime. So I think a significant reduction in fly tipping has taken place. There's been some recent publicity around that, something that residents are very concerned about and report in large numbers to us. And we've had 2 recent fly tipping prosecutions as well. So in terms of look and feel of the borough, we'll be doing more work on that in addition to preventing crime, tackling antisocial behaviour as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Any other questions or contributions? No, thank you so much. In that case,
I may just make one brief contribution. I suspect that the reason serving police officers are applying is because the salary is virtually the same, but it's not quite as dangerous. Be an LAT officer, but that was the observation.
Oh, we can see from once you have them on board, maybe we can find out from them exactly. Okay, well, thank you very much. In that case, we can bring this item to a close. Thank you very much for coming and for reporting to us. The next item is the date of the next meeting. Do members note the date of the next meeting, which is on the 24th of April, 2024. Thank you very much. And possible topics to be considered. I think also we had a brief discussion earlier with the officers from the Environment Department around the budget. Perhaps we could discuss prevent as an item at the next meeting in more detail. We have done it before, but not as a standalone item. And I know we've discussed with Neil that maybe we could bring that at the next meeting if that would be possible. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think that would be interesting, but to what extent does the local authority have any power to change how prevent is implemented? Is it just a central government program and we don't necessarily have any say over how we implement it?
So ever since there was a statutory duty on local authorities to take prevent into account in everything it does, I think it's up to the local authority to define how it delivers that program of work, but it gives us the broad legislative framework within which to operate.
Okay, thank you.
Just one more question.
Is it on prevent? Because we have a meeting.
It is on the last item, but it is honestly a neutral.
Sorry. Sorry. Do you mind if we just bring it to a close? Yeah, because I think we've stayed for a while. Yes, yeah, we can. I'm sure we'll have you back at the next meeting, and yeah, we can ask you more questions then. In that case, we'll bring the meeting to a close, and thank you everyone for attending and everyone for watching, and we'll see you at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
So reports to the police for antisocial behaviour have gone down. Reports